Okay, let's look at the timing on this polar graph for this camshaft that I just put in this engine. It's an Empi 4100, 14 degrees intake. The intake valve opens at 14 degrees before and closes at 42 degrees after bottom dead center. So if we take the 14 plus the 180 that it moves from top to bottom plus the 42 gives us a running duration here of 236, or pardon me, just a duration of 236. So we want to take a look at that and see if it's opening where it should. So I've got a dial indicator set up here on the top, and I'm just going to turn this thing over to 50 thou of lift. And at 50 thou of lift, right there, we should see our first pattern here happen, which would be at 14 degrees before top dead center. And in this case, it's number 2, so the center is actually bottom here. And it looks like I'm just about at the 16 mark here. About 12, 14, yeah, about the 16 mark. So it's a little bit advanced, but hey, that's okay if it's a little bit advanced. So we'll continue on with this now and moving to that center right there now. And then we're going to go 180 degrees. So we're going to bring it back up to here. And then we're going to go for another 42 degrees. The intake goes, so if we bring this up to 42 degrees, 40 went past it, so you always go back and come back up to it. So there's 42 on the wheel, and we're back at 50 thou of lift. Okay, so that's where we should be to finish the pattern, because everything's established at 50 thou. So that opens at the intake valve at 14 before, goes through the center of 180 plus that 42 to give us a 236 degrees of duration. So now let's go back and take a look at this. And we'll run through it again and see what I get for max lift here. Now this is based on the geometry I have. I've increased it slightly from OEM. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 440, 440, should be 445, 446, 445. Okay, so 445 thou of lift, and the manufacturer calls for 420. So I do have a 1-to-1 ratio rocker on there, which should get me to the 420 from the 383 of lift. But here on the intake valve, I'm not exactly sure, but we've attained it a bit from the ratio of the rocker and a bit of the geometry that I've changed on here, because I'm running 90 thou of shim underneath these to get the right angle. So what I do from here is now getting that 440 lift. If I go back to my 0 and I take half of that, so I go 100, 200, 210, 20, so that's 440, and let's say 3, because it was about 2.5, right about there. What I should see now is how relaxed that rocker arm is. And if that rocker arm's sitting nice and parallel across the deck, which it looks to be, at half that lift, then your rocker arm geometry is set in a very relaxed position. You see that it's not leaning too far forward or too far back. And that shows that it's going to get the mechanical advantage and some based on how you've positioned the shims underneath, and of course the ratio of the rocker. Anytime you want to increase valve lift, it's always through a multiple or a multiplication of a mechanical advantage. So for example, a 1.1 to 1 ratio rocker, or 1.5 to 1, and 1.25 is pretty common on Volkswagens, and 1.4 is on some applications. But if you get them running at that relaxed position, and I'll just burn it back up to its max lift. There it is again. And you can have a look down in here now And I got no coil bind on my springs. The rocker arm's on a very still fairly relaxed angle, but I'm getting all that lift out of it. Okay, so I'll take a look at it from this side so you can see, you know, it's up. Now let's move the dial indicator. And you can have a look at it. See, it's not on very much of an angle. A lot of times guys will get them really cocked off an angle, and it's because the rocker arms are too low. So of course shimming them, and took a trial and error on this one. I think I'm 90 thou under the bottom of these down in here, so you can see them. Yeah, I think it's 90 thou in there. So as long as you got enough stud, you're good. And it helps correct the rocker arm ratio, and again, maximizing the lift, maybe even more in this case. And I'm not sure why, but I got about 2 degrees of advanced timing on the cam, so I'm looking pretty good. We'll give her a try.